The power of ritual. That's what I want to talk about today. When my partner, husband, David Smith, died many years ago now, 10 years ago, by suicide, my whole life was thrown into chaos, as you might imagine. In that time that followed, I used so many rituals. I actually wrote a book, You Make Your Path by Walking, that describes many of the rituals I did use so that others who are going through times of transition and loss and shifting and changing could have some examples of what to do. One of the ones that I'll share with you that's probably the easiest to explain is a ritual that I did at the beginning of an event that I held for all of those family members and community that were closest in to me, to David and me. And I had a friend of mine who played shake, 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 shake the shamanic rattles. And this amazing cacophony of sound. This sort of was the opening of the whole ritual that we did with everybody. And the purpose of the ritual was to let us all be in congruence with what we were actually feeling, with the shattered nature of what we were feeling, and also with all the emotions that we were all feeling. And so this fever pitch of the rattles as they were shaking really called the whole room into attention. And then once that had finished, I took a bowl, this beautiful antique bowl that David had collected in from China, that had a tiny chip out of it, but it was very precious for him. And I took it over to the hearth in front of the fireplace. When the rattles quieted, I picked the bowl up and I smashed it with all my force onto the hearth. And of course, it broke into millions of pieces. But there was something in that initiation to the ritual and in that ritual act that was so aligning. It was like, this is what I felt like. And probably the rest of you in the room feel like this too, was the message. And that there'll be no putting back together again of these pieces. This marks the end of something. And we will all have to somehow go through this, and something new will arise on the other side, but it won't be putting this back together. So that's just an example of how ritual can be so powerful to bring you in some kind of authentic presence. I'd like to inspire you to learn this language. It is a language that brings together the unconscious and the conscious mind. This skill, or language as I call it, has been around for millennia and still very much present in Indigenous cultures. They know that it's important for the individuals and the community to be in rituals around certain threshold moments. For example, the rites of passage of young girls and boys moving through puberty. The honoring of that moment, recognizing there's something being left behind, and it's a fragile time, and there's lots of anxiety, and there's an excitement maybe about the future. Ritual asks us to slow down, to kind of come into this liminal space between this transition moment and honor it, not as a thing you kind of skip through to get to what's next, but actually as the place from which you will source what is next, and you will pay homage to and respect what has come before. So there is a beautiful potency to ritual. I call it an evolutionary technology because I think we need it right now. We are in the midst of giving birth to the next level of our expression as a human species. And certainly for the women that we work with, we teach how to bring this language online to really help us be on the edge of evolution. So we work with symbol in ritual. We work with imagination. We work with actions that move through the body. We work with the feeling realm. And that comes into relationship with the conscious mind, So this is a beautiful way that ritual can be so helpful in disorienting times. And really, who is not in a disorienting time right now on the planet? Certainly collectively, but personally, there's so much changing. There's so much we have to let go of that we need to prepare for in the future, or sort of cast our images of the future out. There's so much about just being present right now in the midst of that uncertainty. And this is what ritual helps us to do. It helps us to mark the threshold moments in our life. So let me give you a few of the principles that I consider when I am creating ritual so that you can take these into your own thinking. And the first one is that it is about presence, not performance. We're not doing a ritual theater to try to impress anybody. It is about bringing all of yourself into the moment and being with what is, whatever you're using that ritual for, whatever that threshold is, being really with it all. That is a beautiful experience. And there's something about that like that act I just described of the shattering of the bowl, that's like, whew, we all came into presence there. The second principle I'll name for you is that it marks a threshold. There is something in the act of ritual where we acknowledge what was is no longer, and we're not really sure what's coming, but I am willing to acknowledge where I am. And that potency of honoring a threshold is a kind of what I call bowing down. There's a sort of recognition that this is beyond my mind, just my conscious mind to try to figure out. I think of the Hopi Indian tradition. They have kivas, these sort of yurt-like structures, and in order to get into this structure where sacred ceremony happens, you have to go bow down. There's a low door that you go through to get in. There is something beautiful about the way ritual says, slow down, be with this threshold right now. And of course, from that slowing down, there is the possibility that what you source in the future comes from that grounded presence, that the next step you take arises from that place. The third thing is ritual brings all of us into engagement. We have the head center, so the ways we are thinking, the imagination that we'll use. We have the heart, the feelings are included, are essential in the ritual, and it has to happen in the body. So there are ritual actions we take. It is the enactment in the body that makes it so powerful. Fourth principle, that it's both a container and a catalyst. So when I think of ritual as a container, we set the containers. It doesn't just happen in a random way, and then we call it a ritual. We actually have a clear intention. We have a clear way that we start. We have whatever the practices will be and whatever the processes will be in the ritual itself that we'll engage in, and the tools we'll use, and then we have a clear end. And if you do that by yourself, that's true. And if you do that with others in a field, then that is extremely important. That there's a sacred space you enter into, and then you leave. So that's the container aspect. And then there's the catalytic aspect of ritual, which is once you have a container, something catalytic can happen. And I had this experience again and again with the rituals that I did and wrote about in my second book, You Make Your Path by Walking. So there's a way that what you can't even imagine in terms of when you gather yourself up for that moment through ritual process, there's a kind of alchemy that occurs, and you don't know what it'll be until you're in that moment. That's why it's kind of a sacred space, but that prepares you for whatever's next. It's transformative in nature, right? So there's the bowing down to the threshold, acknowledging you do not know what this will be, what the future will hold. You create the container for the transformation to occur, and ritual encourages that. And then the fifth principle is that it connects you to a larger web. whether you do the ritual alone or with others. So if you're with others, there's a witness field, and that's beautiful. And I invited many different friends and family to be with me in various rituals in that first year after David died, because there's something so powerful that happens in the collective field. But also, you can do rituals on your own, and I do many rituals on my own. And one of the things that happens in that gathering is that you connect to the larger field. You drop into something larger than yourself. You open your heart to something larger than yourself. We do that actually in our Mysterial work 4 times a year. I offer a ritual for the equinoxes and the solstices. And I work, and in the Mysterial work, we work with light and dark. We work with yin and yang. That's the basic principle, the awakening of the feminine and masculine within, and the weaving together of those forces inside ourselves. And so these equinox and solstice moments are a beautiful time to use, could say, the cosmic energy to come into our own lives and see where are we now in the cycle of time and in the cycle of our own lives unfolding. So I hope that's enough to get you interested if you're not already in ritual and exploring in just simple ways how you might engage it in a time of transition, like what you may be going through. If you're watching this video and you're watching it now till the end, there's probably something of interest to you here in this language. I think of ritual as a portal. It's a portal into the sacred rhythms that are just beneath the surface of our lives, but we don't necessarily sense them all the time. A portal into the sacred rhythms beneath the surface of our lives. And when we do that, we open into an energy, a hidden wholeness, we might even say, so much larger than ourselves. So I hope you explore.